As someone who is always looking for the next new flavor to discover, I am so excited to give you the opportunity to try something new and delicious. This summer, while visiting family, I got to try some pretzels from Jen's Backstube, and let me tell you, they were incredible. The fresh out of the oven smells, the pillowy soft interior, and the satisfying chew were all so comforting and delicious. Now, picture yourself indulging in a freshly baked pretzel made with the same care and tradition as those of Jen's native country, Germany. I am here to tell you, Jen provides authentic pretzels that exceed the taste and quality of those commonly found in malls or in the freezer aisle at the local grocery stores. And they can be yours. Jen will ship them directly to you. They come in a wide variety of styles, from sticks to bites, salty to sweet, and even gluten-free options are available. Just head to jensbackstube.com. That's JENNSBACKSTUBE. There you can learn a little bit more about Jen's story and click on shipping to see what delicious treats can be delivered to you. And now, on with the show. This is the summer school series of Lessons We Forgot, and we're going back to September of 2025 with this one. In it, I discuss all of the problems kids these days are dealing with that we never had to deal with, and how much better things were back in the day. But I also noted that pretty much every generation, for thousands of years, has been saying the same thing about the ones that come after. Social scientist Adam Mastroianni wrote a book about this very phenomenon that he calls the illusion of moral decline. So it turns out that just like kids struggling, it is also very common for adults to criticize the kids for struggling. Thankfully, in the episode, I came to a pretty positive conclusion, which, as you know, is totally on brand for me. Recently, though, I heard about a study conducted by Alexis Redding, a developmental psychologist at Harvard. She and her team went back through loads of surveys and interviews with students 50 years ago. Shockingly, those kids were going through pretty much the same thing as our kids were these days. So much so, the modern students she shared the surveys with were not able to distinguish between the difficulties kids were dealing with today with what they were dealing with several generations ago. Her main conclusion was that young people will always have a difficult time finding their place in the world and navigating life. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't try to help them or guide them through this difficult time. It means we should have a little more empathy with them when we do, because we were probably going through something just as difficult for us when we were their age. We tend to remember the fun parts of our youth, but we also tend to forget or at least diminish the negative stuff. Special thanks to Dr. Lori Santos and the crew at Happiness Lab for introducing me to both of the experts who helped me see this fresh take on a very old idea. This is the summer school series of Lessons We Forgot, and this episode is called Kids These Days. I just read a quote not too long ago, and I think it perfectly sums up kids these days. It goes like this: "Children today love luxury. They have bad manners and contempt for authority. They show disrespect for their elders, and they chatter instead of doing any real work." That's 100% correct, am I right? It's easy to see that the generation that we're teaching right now is the worst behaved, most lazy, most entitled, least respectful, and most ill-mannered group we've ever seen. I can't be the only one who's noticing this. I know I hear you guys saying similar things to me all the time, and parents have noticed too. I can even hear them complaining to me at conferences about how terrible their kids are. So, who made this very astute quote? Which truth teller has been brave enough to finally tell it like it is? Oh, well, that was actually a quote from Socrates 2,400 years ago. Since then, each generation seems to have their own doubts about the generations that follow and what might be corrupting them. Before phones, it was TV. Before TV, it was radio. I mean, what's more wholesome than radio? CDs were censored in the 90s to keep kids from listening to the wrong kind of music by putting parental advisory stickers on them. Jokes on the censors, though. That just let us know which CDs to buy. Even comic books had their own censoring board in the 1950s. There was even a moral panic after the invention of the printing press in the 1500s because of the corrupting influence of books. Yes, books. Turns out that kids these days aren't really all that different from kids in the past. To be brutally honest, they probably aren't all that different from us when we were their age. And a lot of kids these days are lazy and entitled and disrespectful and ill-mannered, but so were the kids a decade ago, and so were we. Of course, this current crop of young people is dealing with their own unique issues and obstacles, so it stands to reason that they have their own way of expressing what it's like to be young right now. I remember when I was young, kinda. So many people were up in arms about the dangers of violent video games and TV shows. This was when video games like Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat were super popular, and every cartoon seemed to be to be about a young, genetically altered martial artist reptile. They said that media like that would desensitize us to death and make us overly violent. We'd all be criminals, they said. But then the crime rate actually dropped, and continued dropping for pretty much the last 40 years, and most of us turned out just fine. Look, I'm not saying that kids these days have it easy, because they don't, or that we don't need to worry about the effects that new things like social media might have on them, because we do, but I'm pretty sure our parents and teachers were having the same conversations about us when we were kids. But then eventually we became the adults. We learned not only from our mistakes, but from the mistakes of generations that came before us. We all know that kids these days have their issues, but they also know way more than my generation did about the importance of mental health. They are much more accepting of people with differences. They're not intimidated by technology, and according to the CDC, kids these days smoke less, they drink less, they get pregnant less, they fight less, and overall they make way less trouble than my generation did. Other studies consistently report that kids these days take longer to grow up, but they also tend to have better relationships with their parents than we ever did. Plus, even though they have higher rates of mental health struggles and suicide, kids these days also don't seem to carry a stigma about talking about those things anymore. Most of us did not become the people our parents wanted us to be. We became something different, or maybe even better. This next generation is going to do the same thing. They won't be what we want them to be. They can't be. Their world is different than ours. But they'll be all right, and probably a lot better than we expected. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Lessons We Forgot. I'm the host, Chris Winkle. You can contact me at lessonsweforgot@gmail.com, and you can follow the show or message Lessons We Forgot on Facebook. Either way, I'd love to hear from you and welcome you to our community. If you really enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with a friend. That is the best way to help grow the podcast. If you want to hear more Lessons We Forgot, I post new episodes on Sunday nights. Make sure you subscribe to follow the show on whatever podcast platform you use. And when you rate the show, like an episode, or leave a comment, we can reach even more listeners. If you hate ads just like me, I do have a Patreon site, patreon.com/lessonsweforgot, and for only $1 a month, you can get the show without ads. You can try that out right now for free to see if it's something you'd be interested in. Thanks again for your support.